Okay, good afternoon. My name is Joshua Gonzalez. I'm joined here today by my friend who's joined us a few times, Matthew Lambert. I'm joined here today with my friend Gerardo Garcia for the last time for our uh, seventh critical response exercise for Sociology 408. On our
Hello.
last, hi, talking about perceptions of violent crimes and terrorism, um, the effect of those perceptions on people, and possible solutions about that. And a general question to ask throughout this is, are we just inherently more bloodthirsty and violent and psychopathic than other people? Or is it something about our culture or our systems that has an influence on that? Good afternoon, Matthew.
Hello. How are you
Hello.
doing?
How would you say crime has affected your life? Without crime, we wouldn't have Grand Theft Auto, so
Yeah,
that's true.
video game aspect has been great,
Um, have you had many experiences with crime, like in your life? Like, have you had it impact you? Do you know any people who are engaged in it or anything like that?
but um, crime hasn't necessarily affected my life like that yet,
Yeah.
thankfully.
Um, no, not in my personal life. I mean, I've worked in some pretty sketchy areas. I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen a couple things, but other than a couple tires being stolen off, like, cars off my shop,
Uh-huh.
uh, which and that just seems like crime, not really violent crime. It just seems like a oh man,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, me either. I mean, honestly, I think maybe as far as I can say, it's just like scams or something, right? In that same vein, what factors do you think might influence our perception, mostly perception, of violent crime or terrorism? Whenever you think of those words, I mean, what comes to mind?
but I have seen people who have been affected by it, and you know. I do feel like I tend to be kind of more empathetic towards like those people, and but it kind of like affects my day too, seeing those people be like affected by that.
I see it as just that's crazy. There's a lot of things going on nowadays.
Hmm.
I mean, I could see how it could influence certain people to say, like, maybe I should start dealing with my situations a certain way, good, positive or negative. But I mean, that's the only way I could see it is just really that's crazy.
I mean, my best friend, who I work with, he grew up very differently from me. He grew up in Fifth Ward
Oh
in
man.
Houston.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
That's the trenches, man. Yeah.
and the way he chooses to go on about things versus the way I choose to go on about things. I mean, there are differences in that aspect,
I think you and I are in a relatively unique like position in that we're in a generation that has grown up in that kind of news space. I think both of us were born after 9/11, right? Um, both of us are kind of born in this media space where like maybe more even increasingly salacious like stories are getting the prime time, right? And if it's terrorism, it's even more so. I think that brings up the next point really well is how does violent crime or terrorism affect you mentally and emotionally, like day to day? Right. I know even whenever I was in high school, right? Like I think we were in high school kind of around the peak of the prevalency of school shootings. Seems like we had at least like one or two notable ones every year, and then of course there are the ones that don't really get picked up. Mhm.
But nowadays with social media, you could see something that happens in your city or in Canada or Africa or anywhere really. You could see it happening. So
Yeah.
I think it's a huge impact nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, I think yeah, like stuff is getting more globalized, right? And I mean like you know The Sopranos. Weird,
Hmm.
weird segue, all right. But like towards the end of the series, right? These mobsters who were usually only concerned in their own private life and stuff after 9/11, right? The main character, his son, like every time they get depressed or they get anxious, they're always thinking about like terrorism. They're thinking about like stuff that's happening like 4 or 5 thousand miles away. And it's like,
Yeah, right.
increasingly like people are getting worried about things that previous generations they would have maybe it's not that the previous generations wouldn't have cared, they just didn't have access to it, right?
Yeah.
Um,
No, I agree. Like, I feel like to answer that question, during the time, I feel like, it worried me. I'd be very, cautious at school,
uh-huh.
looking around the room, looking around the cafeteria. You know,
Yeah.
it really did affect my everyday life back then. And, now that I'm out of school, I figured, oh, well, maybe, that worry would like just kind of fade away, with me leaving school. But no, I realized, I still got family in school, I still got friends that go to school.
Mhm. So I think maybe those factors cause people to be a lot more engaged, but maybe ultimately a lot more stressed than
Yeah,
previous generations might have been.
yeah, I could see that definitely.
And like Uvalde and whatnot, and her even saying that she's going to go to a school, it still does worry me.
Mhm. I don't think I maybe think of it that much, but like every once in a while I do think about like, well, no one really thinks about it that much until it is happening, right? And so that does still kind of concern me, you know? Yeah, like do you feel like maybe you're more engaged and maybe more subsequently a little bit more stressed in your day to day? Like, do you find yourself thinking about stuff that happens like not only states away, but whole countries and continents away? I mean, do you find yourself in that situation?
No, not usually,
No.
honestly. Like, I'm not gonna say that I necessarily don't care. It's just more so a thing of I don't live there, or like it's a fact of like it's not gonna affect me. I'll read up on it, if I see it, I'll be like, dang, that's crazy, that sucks.
Mhm.
But I mean, if it's not really gonna directly affect me, I'm not gonna sit there and worry about it.
To close it out, I suppose, is this last big question, right? Is considering all of that, right? Like considering experiences and perceptions of violent crime and of terrorism. Terrorism, I think, is maybe something that we've talked about a lot. What solutions do you think about or do you support to reduce that, right? You mentioned one before we started. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, what do you think? Are there any that you can think of?
A little bit more gun control, I feel,
Uh-huh.
especially for people who I, I guess you could say too with how people are obtaining these weapons and they're not even registered.
I feel like I have different angles. Overall, I'd say mental health is a pretty big thing, especially with like modern day terrorism with like, shooters and whatnot. A lot of them do tend to be, mentally ill and, have shown very clear signs to them being mentally ill, and that could be something that could be improved upon like everywhere. Yeah, stricter gun laws.
I feel like it should be a little bit harder to obtain a weapon because with the couple weapons that I've bought so far in this past year in 2025, it took me less than 35 minutes to go to Academy, 10 minutes down the road, and acquire them.
But with like the violent crime and all that, that's also a whole nother issue. Overall, a lot of it does end up going back to like gun control.
But particularly in Texas, right? Like gun ownership is like an identity or like a character trait, right? Like the behind you, the Marlboro Man, right? Like people have like this image of like the Western cowboy in America, and gun
Right.
ownership is like incredibly tied with that. But yeah, all right, man. Well, thanks so much for your time. It's been a lot of fun.
Yep.
And as a nice thing to end off the semester, this is Buddy. This I'll add it in the recording edit. This is Buddy. And if we're talking about violence, he's quite a violent guy. He will scratch you.
He's always on social media. So
He's always he's he's brain rot.